People need to remain vigilant. If you're ordered to evacuate, you need to do that.
Preparations are intensifying here along the coast. Storm shutters are starting to go up as residents remain on high alert.
What is that?
It's an adoption story from
Selected! That's cool.
Hello, everybody. It has been a few months since I've gotten a chance to put out an episode. I appreciate your patience. I'm super excited about this episode, though. This episode's family is near and dear to my heart. I've known them for several years now. And in fact, Julian and I also have done another podcast before called Seeker, so feel free to check that out. But their story is an amazing story, a story of faith and compassion. You see, Julian and Kim thought that they were just going to be adopting a baby, but instead they found themselves flying literally into a storm, a hurricane, to go rescue two siblings. I hope you enjoy their story.
Okay, and go. My name is Julian. I am 40 years old, and my wife's name is Kimberly. I have 2 kids. 4 kids. Okay, can we start over? Okay.
My name is Kim. My husband's name is Julian, and I now have 4 kids. And this all started about 7 months ago when my husband and I decided that we were going to move forward on adopting.
Yeah, man. My name is Julian. I know. My name is Julian. I'm married to my wonderful wife, Kim. We have 4 children now and a bunny. So this is a little bit about our journey. I think that it's probably okay to say that we actually started out not even knowing if we wanted to have kids. That's not a well-known fact about us. We weren't even sure if we wanted to have kids. We were having a lot of fun just being single and having or without kids and having fun. We made the decision to have kids, and when we did, we were like, man, yeah, this is cool. And this is like what we felt that we were kind of built to be parents. And I think who we are, we've complemented each other in being parents, which made us think, yeah, we're like a good team. We're good with this, you know. Kim's like super patient and wonderful. I'm like a hammer, but I'm also the fun one. I'm nonstop, just really silly. So I'm 2 things. I'm a hammer and extremely silly and fun. Kim's responsible and compassionate, therefore. So after we had 1, then we were like, hey, let's have another kid. So we did, and we had Eli. He's a box of fun. Eli is just completely wild and crazy. Julia is much like me, kind of chill. So then we had like the complete like thing going on, the 4, Fantastic 4. When we were good, we were set. I think the only thing is we always said that we wanted to have some kids and adopt some kids. So once we kind of got started and we had the 4 and we were living in another state and everything was good, our kids were growing and we were getting past the baby stage, which I love the baby stage. And we were growing up and they were getting a little bigger and we were like, yeah, this is cool. And I do have to say things were rather smooth. I think we have both read a lot and studied a lot from God's Word. And, David Platt has written very compelling books, but that made us really consider how easy things are and were. And and we've been trying to like step outside of that. Kim actually, before we even had kids, wanted to like get into foster care and helping kids. I'm not sure how that ended. It probably ended with me somehow circumventing the whole idea and like making her think it was so incredibly hard that we should never do it. But at any rate, had kids. And then we started just kind of chatting about adoption, but we just said, hey, we'd do it later.
And we didn't know what that was going to look like, but we felt that this was the path that God wanted us to go down. We felt like we needed to see what he had in store for us and if this is how he wanted to use us while we were here on earth. So we decided we'd fill out the paperwork, and we thought it was a good time in our life as our kids are 9 and 7, and we have the means and the time and the ability to take on more children. But it was very scary because our life was very smooth and comfortable, and we don't have any family on this side of the country, so it's a scary thing to take this on. Feels like by ourselves.
I'm going to say that one of the main drivers for us thinking about adoption once we moved to the West Coast was probably we saw some of our friends working toward adoption back on the East Coast, and then on the West Coast we had some very dear friends who were adopting. And we went to like kind of a get-together for them to talk about their adoption. And I don't know. We basically walked out of there, got in the car, and looked at each other. And I think Kim was like, man, so I guess we're going to adopt now. And I looked at her, and I was like, we actually have no reason, like there's no reason why we wouldn't. We can't say no. And that just kind of became the house mantra is, well, we can't say no, right? And I think we spent a lot more time like just examining scriptures we'd read and who that we say that we are and the responsibility that I think that we have. Kim will always say that she felt like we had a lot of love to share and things like that. And I believe that's very true, because if you take what I said in the beginning, I thought we're not the best parents at all, but we have fun, and it just feels like having fun's a big part of it, and we love our kids. So we felt like if we're having fun and we love our kids, and hey, we have a spare bedroom, we should open this thing up. So our dear friends, we talked to them about it, and we saw that they were making it through, and we said, we should kind of get into this. We should chat about it. So Kim got up all the nerve for us to have that conversation, and I just kind of hopped in. So my plan was we should definitely go adopt a little baby, because that's where I feel like my skill set is with the babies. I feel like that's my jam. I feel like God has gifted me to be able to put a kid to bed and just rock a kid. I feel like that's my jam, except for Eli. He fought me. But I just always thought this is where it's going to go.
So we filled out the paperwork, and we started receiving emails about children, mostly babies that were coming in the future. But every once in a while, you get older children. So we sent our profile, which is kind of like our our brochure, who we are, to many birth mothers. And I really don't know how many, maybe 25, maybe more than that, over the course of what was probably 4 months. It took us a few months to do the actual home study, but then maybe 4 months or so of sending profiles out. And there were some children that were a little bit older, 3, 4, but I think we did send our profile maybe to 1 or 2 of those. So we never heard anything, and we did get matched briefly, but it actually wasn't a good match, and so it fell apart. The paperwork, the birth mother said that she wanted that she wanted photos and pictures a few times a year. And then immediately when I talked to the agency, she actually wanted visits. So it was confusing, and we were not willing. She was in Louisiana, and she wanted us to come once a year, and she wanted us to commit to that. And we were not willing to commit to that, to visit her every single year. So it was not the right fit for us, and therefore we decided to back out of that. But it all happened in about an hour or half an hour. So we moved on from there. It wasn't the right fit. So I have had a heart for older children because I always, every time the email comes through, or actually I love to torture myself and go on these websites where it has like teenage children's, and I just cry. I just read like these teenagers. So anyway, I've always had a heart for that, but I don't really know what that means. I don't know anybody who's adopted, well, many people that have adopted much older children. And with my kids being 7 and 9, it's just not a good idea right now. So anyway, my heart has always been for that and for siblings. Oddly enough, I've always felt like I love when they try to have siblings stay together, because I love my sister and I think we've been through everything, right? So I think it's great when people keep siblings together.
Once we got going with the process and we created our profile and we did all the paperwork, there's one thing. We did all our paperwork in the beginning, and a social worker came over and we worked through that process, and then we went away on vacation, and we really tried hard to ram it all in before we went on vacation, because in our eyes we were about to get a baby. And we go on vacation, and while we're there, we talked to some other folks who had like been through this process, and I don't know, I think we got a little discouraged while we were there. It was tough. We didn't have our dear friends to talk to who had a newborn who could encourage us and go, no, really, it's okay that I'm not getting sleep. It's cool. And we came back, and if, just being transparent, I think we weren't as motivated to like figure things out. We were moving super slow then. And I think, we just, again, we talk a lot. So one night we were just like blabbing at each other, and we're like, look, are we going to do this thing or not? Because we're really not making any progress. And in terms of paperwork, Kim does it all. And just be honest, Kim does all the paperwork. I just sign things. And she was like, look, it's all here. We need to do all this. And so we just kind of slowly made the next couple of steps. And, we started we saw some profiles, and we would put our profile out there, and we just kind of reciprocated that process back and forth. And I think at some point it was all transactional, like we were just boom, boom, boom. But I don't even know that we were necessarily thinking through it. And then we just had several more heart-to-hearts. We were praying, we were talking about it. And then we kind of got in this moment where we were like, okay, look, we're back. We're back. And I think we were looking at profiles much more seriously and thinking through it, and getting to that point where you kind of look at a profile, like Kim would say, ooh, what about this one? I would look at it and I would be like, oh man. And I would see or read about the child and read about like their horrible circumstance, and I would start getting connected, like just from reading a profile. And I knew that was a really good sign, because I would get super connected, and then we would kind of like, however we talk about this process, submit our profile, and I would wait. I would be at work, like in my next meeting, not even paying attention. I'm like, is it going to go down? Is it going to go down? And then I would get home, and I would be like, we get anything? She's like, no. And I was like, okay. But that process was happening, so it was a good sign, I think.
So anyway, in August this year, I had gotten an email about another child that was being born, and we always just briefly talked about it. We didn't have a lot of restrictions. We were going to let God choose the gender, and as far as, there's always a lot of issues with the birth mothers, but we really didn't want to discriminate. We just wanted to put it out there for the most part and see what God said. We figured God would make the right choice. So there was another email. We always talked about it and prayed about it, and then I'd send out the profiles, kind of like the thing that we did. And so it was really weird. I got this email about a baby coming, and I text Julian or something. He was at work. And for whatever reason, he decided to FaceTime me just to talk about it or pray or something. And so it was the kids and I, my older two now, we're sitting on the couch FaceTiming him. We were talking about this baby. Okay, we're going to send our profile. Okay, when are they due, And I see a text come in with a picture, and it's about, are you interested in these children? And I saw it pop up, and so I kind of laughed. I said, oh boy, hold on. Because usually you get an email that's like kind of a generic email to a bunch of people, right? Like, hey, let anybody know if you want this if you want to submit your profile. But when you get a call or a text, it makes you sweat because you're thinking, oh, you have to reply right now, right? This is a situation that's a little bit different than just getting an email. So I laughed and I opened it, and it was 2 children in Florida, 3 and 4. It was a girl and a boy, siblings. And I was asked, would you be interested in this? And so we all didn't know what to think of it. And so since we were on FaceTime, it was so funny. We just kind of were staring at each other like, what do you think? What should we say, And
She's like, I don't know. What should we do with this? And, immediately I was like, well, make sure you submit the other profile first, because that's where we were. So let's do that check before we have this other discussion. And she was like, hey, are we not going to talk about this? And I was like, but did you do the other one? So she's like, yeah, I don't know that she ever actually did the other one. But I was like, make sure you, because I was really pushing to, because, it's one thing to submit it. It's one thing for it to be really, I got a text message, here's a picture. And that one, I was like, okay, well, let's, hi. So she has a picture of me. Because we're, FaceTime, you can snap it and take a picture. She has 2 pictures of me as we were talking about it. And both of them, I don't know, they look bad, because I'm like, have my hand over my face, and I'm like, I don't, it looks like I'm agonizing over this. And so I'm like, hey, let's just pray about this thing.
it's really funny because, of course, the picture is adorable and your heart just goes out to them immediately, no matter what. And my kids just were so excited. Oh, they're so cute. Oh, we have to do this. Oh, you say yes, Mom. And it's really funny because my son has not been that into this at all. Like, he's pretty indifferent. You know, we've had pictures of other kids, little boys and stuff, and he's looked at them, and I said, well, Eli, don't you want to give them a home? And he would say, oh, well, yeah. Like, he knows, like, what's the right thing to do, but he never gets excited. He just says, yeah, okay, that's fine. You know, he's just not that into this whole process. So it was really funny that he jumped all over this picture of this little girl and this little boy. And so anyway, we did pray about it, and I mean, here's the thing, it goes back to when we started this, is that we never had a good reason to say no, except that life was really easy. That's the only reason, because it would be hard, because it would take more money, more time, more energy. These are all terrible reasons. So it's like, okay, why would we say no to this 3 and 4-year-old? Because that looks really, really hard. I know nothing about them except that they're in Florida and they're 3 and 4. That's all the information we got. I think that's all we got at that moment.
This is one thing that I think all along in our relationship, we've been like, when we want to make a decision, we'll tussle back and forth. But I think we really know at the end of the day that if we want to settle it, we will just stop and pray together. And our pretty consistent prayer is, Lord, if this is what you want to happen, make it happen and kick us out of the way. If this is not what you want to happen, then we know it'll blow through. Kind of like Gamaliel, you know? It's like, hey, these guys are of God. And that's the way we think about it. And we prayed that. And then after that, I'm like, we're cool. And we got off the phone. I go back to work, go to my desk. And then it felt like minutes. It probably wasn't that soon, but it felt like right away. She texts me and she's like, hey, you know, it seems like if we say yes, then we're getting on a plane. And I was like, whoa, okay. A lot going on right here. And, you know, the first thing I thought was, I have a lot going on at work. Whoa. Because the whole time we always thought about this, like, submit my profile now. I don't know, so what if this happens tomorrow? We got this thing on Monday, got this meeting, you know. And those are all thoughts in the wrong place. We knew that, or I knew that.
And so I text back. I think I text back, yes, we would be interested, after we prayed a few times and got off FaceTime. And And it was so funny. Again, I was waiting to hear back. Okay, I was waiting for someone to say, okay, here's some more info, or send me your profile. And the kids kept saying, have you heard? Have you got a call? Has anybody saying anything? What's going on? And I just thought, this is so funny. They've never asked me twice about a child. And so then I got a call about it, and I was told, look, there's really not another profile right now. So I want you to know, if you send this, it's like 99% sure you're going to need to fly to Florida tomorrow. So it took my breath away, and I said, okay, I need to call Julian. Because, we've sent so many, it felt like. Then you're always like, we'll never hear anything, So I called him at work, and I think it took his breath away. And, we said, okay. So we sent our profile, and some time went by, and then I got a phone call, and I was told, okay, you need to buy tickets and head to West Palm Beach tomorrow.
So she came back. She was like, hey, this thing's going down. And I was like, okay, cool. And hours later, she's like, yeah, seriously, can you find some plane tickets? And I'm at work. And I remember it was a Wednesday night because I was actually, I had a ton of work to do. And I was going to miss Wednesday night Bible class. I was already there. I was like, I'm not even going to make it home in time. And so then I'm getting plane tickets, looking for plane tickets, and trying to figure things out. And one of my coworkers walks down, and it's like 8:00 at night at work. The lights turn out. We've turned the lights on like twice. And I thought I was there alone, and a coworker walks down, and he's like, hey man, why are you still here? I was like, dude, I'm trying to adopt children here. And he was like, oh, whoa, this is real. I was like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And I think when I said it as a joke, but when I said it, I was like, oh man, I'm trying to adopt children here. And it like made my stomach drop to the floor. And what was so cool is that guy goes on this big long story to tell me about how his cousin was adopted, and how it was such an amazing thing, about how the place they were in was terrible, and how his aunt was able to help them. And I was like, oh, this is exactly what I need. So hopped in the car, went home. I was like, hey, we doing this? Everybody was super pumped. We're doing this. And Kim says she has had anxiety, but I think she was just pumped then. She's like, we're doing this, right?
So I was upstairs, and the kids were eating dinner, and it's really sweet because I came downstairs, and I videoed them, and I told them, hey, do you guys want to go to Florida and go pick up your brother and sister? And they both screamed, and they jumped out of their chairs, and they ran around. And it was so wonderful because, my daughter's been so excited about another sibling. But my son I just thought I would have to drag him wherever we went. And, seriously, I thought I was just going to have to give him a stern talk the whole time, like, get over it, it's not about you. I just thought we were going to have all these talks about him, not thinking about other people. And, and he was so excited, and it was so bizarre. I'm like, this is weird. So anyway, this all happened in probably less than 2.5 hours, from the text message to go fly tomorrow, find some plane tickets and go. So this is just like rocked our world. We were stunned. And we were supposed to have a call with the birth mother, but with the time zone and there was something else going on, she had to work or something. She couldn't really talk to us that night. So we were going to do it in the morning, but we were flying out in the morning. So we ended up never talking to her over the phone, but we were supposed to, but it just didn't work out. But her heart was set that we were the right family. So that's what we did. It was the next 12 hours were just pure chaos. I mean, we're trying to pack 4 people, leave indefinitely. It was just wild. And we were trying to find plane tickets, and we were trying to find a place to stay, which should be pretty simple, except that there's this hurricane coming straight for West Palm Beach in like 2 days.
The entire state in the danger zone as a Category 3 storm spins closer.
This is a major event. It's much better to be prepared and then not have to face it than to go into one of these things unprepared.
The Bahamas bracing too. Back in South Florida, at the docks, boats secured. As business owners board up.
We're thinking, where do we go? We have to stay in state, but we just didn't know what to do. Here was my biggest fear. When I really thought about it, my biggest fear was we were going to pick up these two sad, terrified children and go to a hotel room and live out a hurricane for 2 days, right? Or a day. Or we were going to end up in some shelter for a day and a half, 2 days, with these two terrified children. Now, this would be different with my own children because they trust us, they know they're safe, they know we're going to take care of them. But I was so anxious about what it was going to look like because I didn't want them, our first couple nights together, to be, oh, let's live through this hurricane and total trauma, right? I mean, that's a scary thing. So we were trying to figure out, are we going to drive to the other side of the state? Where are we going to go? So it was just a long night of Airbnbs. And, I really didn't want to stay in a hotel because 6 people in a hotel room sounded terrible. So I was convinced we needed a house, a small house, but a house. It's like people need bedrooms. So that was Julian's job, plane tickets and find me a house to stay in. So that was his job.
And then everything just moved really quickly. It just felt like we were packing to go camping, but like we just figured out we were going camping like an hour before we were going camping. That's how it felt. Like camping, like specifically what you need and you're just throwing stuff in the car. That's how it felt. We're just throwing things in bags. I was booking flights, and I wasn't really even checking to make sure I got the dates right. I was just booking them, and I was just finding a house. And the truth is, I didn't get the house until the very next day before we got on the plane. I definitely looked at a house, but I did not get a house until the next day. So the super early flight, we get up, we wake the kids up, we're like, let's do this. We get the most expensive taxi service possible. We're driving there, and then we get a call that we need to turn around. The weather's terrible because of the hurricane, and that's the other thing I should mention is that when I learned that there was a hurricane, that was more or less what was kind of in my head, probably more than anything else, because in my head, like, I think we're gonna get these kids, like, we have fun. And Kim and I, we work out together. Like and we'll pray to God and we'll work the kid thing out. But it was the hurricane. I was really freaked out about it. I was like, man, I don't know about that one, So we got the news about the hurricane. We come back home. And me, I was like, okay, cool. Well, I guess I'm going back to work. And in my head, I was thinking, this is one of those like letdowns or one of those situations where like everyone else who's been through this process has told us happens. They told us there's ups and downs, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I think I just tried to get back in the mode and be like, it's okay, it'll happen again, and we'll just keep doing this process. But the kids were like, we doing this or not? Which was weird because I thought they heard what happened, and Kim was very much like, are we doing this or not? And I was like, yeah, I'm still in. I thought it was over.
So we had to get up really early in the morning and catch our flight. And I ended up calling around and just talking to, I don't know, when you adopt, the minute you get matched, like 5 people call you that you have no idea who they are, and then they act like you know who they are, and they talk to you about things that you don't know what they're talking about, but they think you know what you're talking about. And the whole time you're like, I'm sorry, who are you? I'm sorry, what do you do? What am I supposed to send you? Like, it's so many things that they ask you. So that was too, like, everyone's calling, and I didn't understand at that point who I needed to call about certain things, right? I'm just like calling random people that have called me before saying, what should I do? Should we really go down there? Like, are we really going to pick them up and then go through this hurricane? You can't watch the news because the hurricane might as well have been there. They exaggerate everything. You can't figure out what's really happening on the coast, So we left for the airport, but we got a phone call to turn around. We were told that the city was being evacuated and that there really wasn't a point in going. But anyway, it was a long day of back and forth. And basically what it came down to was, if you're going to have these children, you need to leave today. You have to get them Friday. So we just had to make that choice. It was kind of, in our hands at that point. If we didn't think we wanted to take on that challenge of living out a hurricane with them, then we just needed to back out. So there was a lot of prayer. And it was disappointing, and especially when we came home from the airport, it was really disappointing because I thought, oh no, what are we doing? But we thought maybe we would go in a few days. But it was sweet because we put the kids back to bed since we left so early. And when they both got up that day, they both said, are we going to get the kids? I mean, they were both just, on their heels waiting, which was really comforting. And so we thought, let's just give it one more try. Okay, God, if we get a flat tire on the way to the airport, if we get stuck in Atlanta, we will know that this is not your will. Like, we're going to try it one more time, But I think that was the hardest thing between us. We just kept thinking, was that God that turned us around, or was it Satan that turned us around? How do you know, And so we're just like praying and praying and praying, like, was that you or was it Satan? So we're like, okay, God, we're going to give it one more time. We will go to the airport. And everything was super smooth. So we had all day at home, which actually turned out to be a huge blessing because I left all kinds of paperwork at home that I needed that I would have had to have like a neighbor go over and scan for hours on end. So praise the Lord, I had time to get my ducks in a row because I didn't before. And we took all the paperwork we needed this time. So we ended up getting to Florida at 10 a.m. And luckily, the social worker there had called us and told us, look, yeah, there's gas stations out of gas, but you have time. You have time. Drive to the other side of the state. I'll get you water. Bring a suitcase of food and batteries and flashlights, and I'll get you water. And if you got to sit it out, you will. You'll be fine. Okay. So luckily, I felt like she was somebody on the ground who was actually there and would tell me. So we felt like, okay, she's got our back. She wouldn't tell us to come, if she thought we were in danger. So we got there about 10 a.m. And I really can't explain the anxiety that we had. Here we are. We rent this minivan and we put 2 car seats in the back, and it is just like, it was just so strange, and then we're just driving around waiting for someone to call us and say, come pick these kids up, because the birth parents both were going to come and drop them off at a law office. And then we were going to come and get them after they left. They did not want to meet us.
My biggest concern the entire time was the hurricane, and I was watching it like a hawk. Every second I was on the Weather Channel or something, and that's just the difference between Kim and me. I think every 5 seconds I had my phone up watching the Weather Channel, and every 5 seconds she had her phone up like looking at the picture of the kids or texting one of her friends and being like, "Am I okay? Is this the right move?" Whatever, And I was just like, man, this hurricane. So it was funny that, we landed and, we go pick up this minivan. And I could tell that Kim was now less like, woo, she wasn't looking particularly cool. Because I think she was thinking about things a lot. And I was just thinking about the hurricane. Because, I was noticing everything. And, okay, so there is some irony here. I actually was in this very town the last time they had a big hurricane. I was there like the week after working for another company, helping relief. And as we're driving through the town, I'm like, I knew that, like, I stayed at that hotel. I'm like, this is so cool. The kids are like, woo. And Kim's like, like, this, I don't care, right? This is a serious situation. And I'm like, it's the hurricane. So we, after we get some food and stuff, then we're like, okay, maybe we should go by Walmart, like bought some stuff. I looked for gas cans. They didn't have any. I think I did buy the most expensive water in the state. But it was one of those moments where, we were just kind of buying everything in the store for no real reason.
And Julian was in full hurricane mode. He's now a hurricane expert. So he bought up all the water in that side of the state, I think, in the 2 hours that we were there. He was so hilarious because he's not a panic person. But I kind of think that was a way for his mind to maybe not be in reality a little bit, right? Like, he was like, I will focus on this hurricane. But I'm glad he did because I was not. And we had so much water. I think we left water there when we finally left 2 weeks later. But he was trying to find gas cans. He's got all kinds of snacks. Our trunk was packed. He was in total hurricane mode. So we went to Walmart and I let my daughter pick out clothes and shoes, or just clothes and stuff for the new girl. And I let Eli pick out that stuff for the new boy and a toy and something that they could give them right away. And then we literally just drove around looking for gas and just waiting for this phone call, which is so terrible.
And we look like some creepers outside. I mean, we were like, seriously, if we'd had a van with no windows, we would have gone to prison. We just like parked and we were sitting there with the windows down. And now it's Florida. Our kids, they can't handle the East Coast anymore, even though, they're just so hot. Like, Dad, turn the air on. Dad, we can't make it. So we're just buying time. I'm looking for coffee. I haven't had enough. And we're just like swirling this thing like a shark.
I did make a very last minute phone call to Jenna, who I have never talked to on the phone, but I've had, I know her and, as, like an acquaintance.
Yes, this is the same Jenna from episode number 2. So if you haven't heard it, go back and check that out. It's the episode called Vaughn, Libby, Gus, Cozy, and Eve.
But, when you're in that situation, you're grasping for wisdom. And so I text her, and she's wonderful. And she called me, and we just said, okay, we have like 10 minutes. What would you tell me? Wouldn't you tell me what's your wisdom? And she gave us great advice. She kind of talked us through first day about what to do first day, just little things. But her best advice was, you're going to have to keep them at the same standard you keep your own children, because your desire is going to be to take them. They've had a rough start. You're going to want to feed them ice cream and buy them all the toys they want for the next, 2 months, right? But that will make your older children, resent them, and they will never feel a part of your family because they have different rules and they are not treated like the children. And so that was awesome. That was so wonderful that we just had somebody who's been through it just give us these little, and she said other things too, but we remembered that one because I think we would have spoiled them, or I think we would have just been like, okay, guys, don't say anything. Let them say those words, or, we just would have let them say whatever they wanted to do. And so I'm so glad I called her because she just, she was just great. So then we waited, and finally we got a text, okay, you can come. And so, again, in adoption, there's nobody that says, so this is what's going to happen, right? Because that's what you want. The whole time you're going through this process, the whole time you want someone to say, here's what's going to happen.
Finally, we get the call. We go in, and it was funny because the way I remember going in is that we go in, and we met the lawyer, and then everyone had to go to the bathroom. And I was like, oh man, now we're stalling. And I'm the one left in the lobby, and I can hear their little voices. And it's me, a lawyer, and I can hear their voices. And this lady's like trying to occupy me at the front. And I'm thinking, can I just go in? Like, is Kim going to be mad if I just walk in and start, hey, playing with these kids? Or do I have to wait? And I can just hear them. And I'm like, man, I want to go in. And I mean, it had to be the longest bathroom trip Kim and Eli and Joy ever been on. I'm like, what is happening in there? They finally come out, and I'm like, yeah, where you get these kids? We could go in. And yeah, so we go in, and I see them, and it's funny because I remember the picture, but in my head they weren't the kids on the picture. Not that it mattered, right? We didn't really care, and they weren't the kids on the picture. And oh man, they were teeny tiny. Wow, they were so small.
And so there they were, and they were just gabbing away because the social worker was in there, and I think somebody else was in there, and they seemed really happy, and they were blah, 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 and coloring. And so the kids went over, and they each gave them their toy, and we introduced ourselves, and they were very friendly. They were very warm, and they were tiny. We just felt like they were so small. They are small for their age, but they just looked so tiny in these big chairs, at some conference table. And that was the first thing I thought is, they're so small, and so we, I thought it was going to be all this paperwork. It was like 2 signatures, and it was like, this is it. So we just signed our name twice on these little paper, and then that was it. It was like, okay, you can go. And the social worker took some pictures, right? And it was just crazy. And then it was like, okay, bye. And that was it. So I have no idea what was going through their little minds. I mean, I would have given anything to get in there for 10 minutes because they'd never seen us in their life, But I should say on the way there, or that morning, we text the birth mother, and she had gotten our number or something, and we were texting her, and we did say, "What are you telling the kids?" Because we want to have the same story. And I'm very grateful for her because she told them, "You are getting a new family. You're getting a new mommy, a new daddy, a sister and a brother, and they're going to take good care of you." And so I feel like that was a gift for us, because I don't know how much they understood at 3 and 4 when your mom tells you that, but it might have helped a lot through that transition. So I was really grateful that the mother took the time to do that for them and for us. And so here we go. Let's get in this minivan and let's drive across the state of Florida, because we got to get away from this hurricane.
I remember I was holding Derek, and I thought that was sweet. He was just so small, and there was one thing that I noticed between then and now, and I'll talk about now in an hour. But the one thing I noticed about then and now is that, if you hold a kid, pick up any kid. If I hold the Juniper, well, she can't grab. But if you hold a kid that knows you, they like grab onto you, right? And I remember holding him, and he was like letting me hold him, but he was nearly balancing on my arm because he just wasn't sure yet. And I remember how odd that felt. And I just kept trying to hold him a little tighter, and he was still like kind of just really rigid, like, I don't know, man. And we got him in the car, put him in the car, and we left. And this is just a very strange process. And then we just started driving. And, we just drove to another coast to dodge the hurricane, because we got this hurricane. I remember in the car, because they pretty much since day one, they've always called us mommy and daddy. But the story behind the mommy is interesting, because Julia and Zamaria were in the back seat, and they were chatting, just playing around, chatting. And I guess Zamaria needed something, and she was like, "Hey, who's that lady in the front seat? Who's she?" And, Julia said, "That's mommy." So then Zamaria was like, "Mommy!" And from then on, she's just been, "Mommy!" And really in that tone, "Mommy!" I've never heard her even said mommy. And, when Derek heard that, he was like, "Oh, mommy, mommy." So then they both were like, "Oh, mommy." And I think Eli probably introduced me. He's like, "And this guy's daddy." And that's it. But that's how he got to be mommy and daddy on day one, which was sweet. And then we went to the location, and we just went in, and it was okay in comparison to later. But we just pulled up, went in, and just started dumping the car out, and kids were running around everywhere. And it's funny because we would just always kind of have these times where we would make eye contact and be like, "Whew," like, "Okay, you good? Well, here we go," and we were just having lots of those, like, "We good?" And because there's a rhythm. There's a rhythm to your house. There's a rhythm to our house, man. And like, it's a rhythm that she can execute by herself. I can do it by myself. And we together, we do it really well. There's just this rhythm. And we were so out of rhythm. And we were trying so hard to just utilize the rhythm that we had, and it was not working. It's like, but kids go to bed like this, and they do this, and it's like, but we were working hard, trying to stay really cool and figure out how this thing should work. And I think both of us, we don't like disorganization, and that's all we had, man. Like, we literally went in and just dumped stuff onto a kitchen counter. And every 5 minutes, both of us were just walking by and re-straightening things on a kitchen counter. It was just driving us insane. And on top of this, we had like new faces, new kids. They were like, "Hey, can we have?" And we're just trying to figure it out.
Derek, who's the youngest one, the 3-year-old, he was really quiet. He wasn't upset. He just was a lot quieter than the girl, Zamaria. She's the 4-year-old. She was a lot more chatty, which is just her personality too. But I don't remember a whole lot. We had a house with a pool, so I think everybody went swimming. It was just so strange. I don't know how to describe it. And to be honest, it just feels, at first for me, it feels like you're babysitting, right? Because, I just don't know anything. Like when you're making dinner, you're thinking, do you eat this? Like, do you drink this? It's so funny just to not know what they want. And just communication was hard. I think we probably talk maybe differently or have different vocabulary. And so they kind of looked at us sometimes like, what are you talking about? And we sometimes looked at them like that, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're saying. And so that's where we started. They went to bed okay. It was a harder night to getting them to wind down and go to sleep, but Julian was awesome. He's like such a calm person. And so we really spent the first week at this one house, and in total, we spent 2 weeks in Florida. We ended up driving more north, but I should say that the hurricane took a total turn and never, ever even really hit much of Florida. So it's kind of hilarious how all of this was spun so out of control. And by the time we got to the other coast, probably in a day or so, Julian would know better because he was the hurricane guy. In a day or so, that thing turned and went straight north. It was crazy. It's just, that's how hurricanes are. Or actually, I think it sat in the Bahamas a while, but it didn't come anywhere near us. We really didn't ever feel the effects. So praise the Lord. I mean, I just think that could have been really traumatic for them to have to go through that with us brand new. So, but the first week was really tough. It did feel like babysitting sometimes. It's very bizarre to, take everybody to Panera. And again, I don't know what they want to eat. What do they eat, And it was just such a time to learn each other. I think through the whole time in Florida, I just always say this, that God helped me so much by making the older kids happy. They were happy. They had a pool in the backyard. They basically were on vacation, and there were 2 more little people in the house, which didn't seem to bother them. They were having a good time. They'd run around and tickle and chase them, and they weren't carrying any anxiety or anything with that. They were just having a great time. And there's something about hearing your children laugh and get along and play when you're very anxious or overwhelmed that's very soothing. So I think he just took that over and made them happy, because I can't imagine if during that process they were crying and being upset. That would have been so hard for me to comfort them at that moment, because it was really hard for us. We wanted to know what we were doing, but we didn't. And we surely didn't have time to break open some book and read about it, And so every night we'd put the kids to bed, and then we'd kind of look at each other and be like, we can do this. You can do this. We can do this. Like, we're going to do this. And then we would say, I don't know what we're doing. Let's just pray for wisdom. And we would say, we don't have time to read a blog. I don't have time to call anybody right now. Let's just pray, and God will give us this wisdom. And Julian would just pray, and we'd be like, okay, we can do it, And it was just kind of funny. I felt like it was cool because we came together so well. It was awesome. I think it was good for us. It was good teamwork. It was really good teamwork. So we would look at each other, we would give each other a good pep talk, we'd be like, we can do it. Yeah, we're gonna do this. And but it's hard to be there because it's not really real world, right? It's not really our life. We're in this town. I don't even know how to get to the store. We have none of our support system. We're totally isolated, and we don't have any toys. We don't have all our books. We don't have anything, We would go out and get a few things, but we had to fly home. We couldn't buy a bunch of stuff. And so we had a swimming pool, but the little ones wore out on that pretty soon. So just the first week was so hard because it just seemed like, how are we going to fill this day, And, of course, we're just waiting and anticipating a phone call saying, you can go home, and which apparently this goes pretty quickly with this law office, but because of the hurricane, and then because we did this over Labor Day weekend, everything just was so pushed back. We lost days and days of that. So we ended up after about a week, we ended up moving to a different home. And this was just a nicer place. And it was it was almost like a new, fresh start. Like that first week was really hard. And I felt like, okay, this is going to be a step forward. And it was. It felt like that. I felt like by the time a week passed, we were a little bit further down the road. And I always say, I wish I could have called myself the week prior, Friday, and said, don't worry, in a week from now, I promise things are going to change, because I thought, wow, they just needed a lot of help. They were very gruff in their speech and rough, and they needed a little softening, and sweetness and manners. And so that, it's something we wanted to give them right away because it was, and they fought a lot too, the two of them. So that was sad, and that caused a lot of conflict, obviously. And so that was a big thing I think we worked on first, was helping them to be kind with their words, but really get them to stop fighting, because that was a big part of the day, was them fighting.
We were developing this new rhythm that felt a lot better. Like, I was showering my man Derek every night at about the same time. So I was like, okay, cool, new rhythm. And those little things were very helpful in learning more about them, like what they did and didn't eat. We found, okay, he does cucumbers, she does carrots, don't mix the two, right? Just little things. And so many things that we didn't know that they weren't going to know and didn't understand and had never tried before, like we go to like a science center or something, and it's like, oh, hey, look, there's a giant turtle. Mind blowing, like blown right out of the ears. They're like, whoa, it's so big, and we're like, you've never seen one of these? And they're like, So it was just crazy because like it felt like everything was brand new and huge and big, which was cool to experience all that all over again and kind of do that. But after a while, we got the call that we could leave. And when we did, it felt good. But for me, I think I was happy to go home, but I knew that that this time, these 2 weeks, were super important, because for me, like, I only see Eli and Julia for like a couple hours at night, right? So I knew all this time that we had been able to spend together was going to just collapse really quickly. And then I was going to have to figure out how to do this whenever I was only going to see all 4 of them for a couple hours a night, like how to make that work. And I was already thinking about that. And I think that was kind of weighing on me, like what to do now. Because I've read a lot. I understand, like, dad involved in family is so huge. And according to the book I read, especially with girls. So, I think I'd made it such a priority with our kids, and I just wanted to make sure that these kids, from whatever background they came from, didn't feel like their dad just abandoned them, right? Because I went to work, or because I traveled to go, to work or something like that. So
we finally got the call, you can go home. And, we you think he would be happy about that, but I think it was hard for us to understand, oh man, now we take them home. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling, but when we had our first daughter, and, you spend a couple days in the hospital, and then they're like, okay, you can go home. And you think, really? You're just going to let me just go home with this child? Like, are you sure I can go home with this child by myself? And that's kind of how we felt. We laughed about it. We're like, so we just take him? Like, nobody's going to, we just put him on a plane? It was the funniest thing. We both felt that way. And then it kind of felt like, okay, now life starts, right? We've kind of been in limbo. We're in this place, of vacation, quote unquote. And, now we have to go. And it's weird because we would talk to the little kids about, well, when we go back to Washington, and it was really sweet. One day I said that, and Samaria said, well, I want to go with you. And I said, but you are going with me. I think, she was confused because I said, well, when we go back, And it was really sweet that she said that. I said, no, you are going back with me to Washington. And so she was really happy about that. So, and we really pumped up the plane ride because they had never been on a plane. So we're like, okay, we've got like a 6-hour flight back. We don't really want this to be a disaster because we're already pretty strung out. So it's really funny because our flight left pretty early. So we left the house about 4:30 in the morning, and we had told them so much about this airplane. And we go out of the garage, and Samaria says, "Where's the airplane?" And it's so funny because there's so many things. This happens still all day long that you think, oh, okay, we didn't cover this. Okay, so here's what we do. We drive to an airport, and it's just like, what? They just look at you like, I thought there was an airplane, you know? So we do this stuff all the time where we think, oh, okay, I guess we got to explain that. So we did, but they did great on the airplane. I mean, I think they were happy. We had little iPads or little tablets for them, and they just chilled out, and Kindles. Yeah, we had little Kindles. And they just chilled out, and I think Samaria slept half of one flight. And so, I mean, thank you, Lord, for that, because that could have gone a lot worse, right? I mean, plane rides can be scary, but they seem to really enjoy it. In fact, I think Derek asks me at least twice a week, can I go on an airplane? So he loves it. He thought that was really fun.
When we took off, I said nothing to Derek at all about it. I just let us kind of take off, and we were flying for a little bit, and I was like, let's see what this guy thinks. And one of the funniest things, he looks over at me, and he notices that like he's leaning back now, and he looks over at the window, and he looks back at me, and he goes, Daddy, are we flying? And I said, yeah, man, we're flying. He looked back over at the glass. He looks back, and he's like, are you doing it? Now, what you have to understand is one of the things that Derek likes to say is, are you doing it? I found that means, are you in control of it? Like if you're in the car, are you doing it? Are you driving? Right? But are you doing it can mean a lot of different things. You just have to know the context where you are. So we're in the plane, and because we've made this is our new little inside joke, are you doing it? I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it, man. He's like, you're doing it? I'm like, yeah, you know. And later to only find out that what he meant was, am I flying the plane? By am I doing it? It was pretty funny, but I wasn't flying the plane.
We had heard about that a lot of people do change children's names just to give them a new start because they don't really know what the names are connected with in the past. And so we talked a lot about that while we were in Florida, and we finally came up with 2 names we both liked and that fit them really well. So we told them about that we were going to give them new names, and we asked them, and they're very agreeable. They would always say, yeah, sure, that's great, you know. I think one day I asked her a couple names, and then Julian said, how about octopus? And she said, sure. So he's like, yeah, I think you can just stop asking her opinion. So when we landed in Washington, we told them, okay, you get your new names now. And we kind of made it like that. Like when they got here, they got their new names. And yeah, we weren't perfect. Nobody was. We still slipped up, and the kids did. But, you know, we're a month later now. And, yeah, we never call them their old names anymore. And the kids don't. And, Julian's saying he does. But most of us don't call them by their old names. So anyway, I think that's really neat. I'm so glad that someone told us that because we got to choose that. And we got to choose that for our biological children. I'm so glad we get to choose that for them because it makes us more of ours, you know? Like we got to pick their names, and I'm really happy about that. So,
but anyway, yeah, it was cool. And then we get home. And I think for both of us, I will agree, when we got home is when I felt the most lost. Like I didn't know what was going on, and I was at home. Yeah, I just remember, you know, getting home. We even have a rhythm for unpacking, and it was off because it just felt like we get there, and like I know what I do. I'm the person, I get all the bags out, I bring them in, and it's like once I brought the bags in, we didn't even have anywhere to put the little kids' stuff. It's like, well, where's their room? Like, where does their stuff go? And I think that alone just like whacked us out because the thing that I probably didn't even articulate well is when we learned that we were going to do this and we got this call, we had not really prepared our house for an infant, nor had we prepared our house for 2 kids. And in my mind, it was always going to be a baby. Now we have 2 kids, 3 and 4, coming home with us. We definitely, we have room in our house, but we have not prepped the house. And while we were gone, wonderful, amazing friends did a lot for us. But we hadn't even been able to wrap our heads around where we were going to do. So then we get home, and I think as we were unpacking bags, it's like, okay, and here's the Maria's bathing suit. Now, where do we put this? Let's just put it in the laundry. We didn't even know. So we had this like mound of their stuff just kind of sitting in the room, and it just, it felt we felt lost because we knew we fit in our house. We didn't know how to get everybody in. And it's like, it's an emotional thing, right? There's physically space and we know what to do. And it was just cool that people were dropping by because I think that made things more normal, right? Like our friends or neighbors would come by and it's like, oh, cool, good to see you. Don't leave, It's like, oh, you stay, because it was like, okay, that's normal. And eventually night came and we just kind of, I do remember now, we put them both, Derek and Maria, we put them both in the same room the first night.
But Julian went right back to work, which was good. He needed to do that and catch up on life. But it was hard, It's long days. And, I remember having 3 and 4-year-old, and they're just hard days anyway, whether they're yours or you just got them, They're long days, and they're active days, and you are on the whole time. And when they go to bed, you crash and you talk all day and you answer the same question all day and you listen to them talk to you all day. And you're like, whoa, I forgot about this. I know I did this. And luckily I have a great neighbor who has kids similar age. And so I would constantly text her, do you answer the same question all day? Oh, do I ever? And she was great. So she'll still text me things her 3-year-old does or something. And I say, okay, great. I feel really normal now. Like this is happening. Okay, this is just totally normal 3 and 4-year-old behavior. So now, let's see, we're about a month and a half into this since the day we, went and got them. And it seems like it's been years. It seems like forever, but I would say the children have all adapted really well. We had a rough first week or 2 once we got home. My son struggled a lot, and they both did. I think they both felt guilty about maybe having some regret, but we let them talk about that. We said, that's okay. You can say that. It's really overwhelming. We're overwhelmed too. Like it's a lot going on. It's okay. So we let them talk about it and we prayed about it with them. And I think too, having conversations with the older ones about just the little bit we know about their previous life makes them feel that this is a good decision. And, when we talk about it from that point of view, there's no doubt that they're happy that they were here. They are here. But now we haven't heard that in weeks. I haven't heard. They don't seem, they seem like siblings. They fight like siblings. They love like siblings. They're all very affectionate with each other. They hug each other all the time, and they seem like siblings. It's just the work of God, all of that. And they feel like they were supposed to be here.
I think we're going in the right direction. And, the Lord's probably tired of hearing from us, like worn out. We call him a lot, and pray a lot. And, sometimes I just think I'm praying about the exact same thing. I know he's listening and he's making moves and things are changing. And, but in no way would I ever take it back or want to do anything any differently. I just know that it's just one of those things where you just made a change, but you have to admit that you've made a change, right? It's not that you just extended your family, but it's that you've made a wholesale change for the better, for the entire family. And I think that's where we are. And we're enjoying getting to know them and hoping that they appreciate getting to know us. And yeah, that's it.